the topic of food comes up a lot. And I always hear the idea of good food versus bad food and what's really the best way to eat and all that. And, you know, I totally get what you're saying, that the belief around the food is really what determines how beneficial it is to a person.
Yes.
But I have this other thought stream, and I have this other thought stream that goes like this, that everything that's alive came through with a specific intention. Is that true?
Yes.
And things like herbs and plants came through with a specific balancing effect. That's why one herb produces a certain effect in the body. Is that how that works?
It is, and the balance of the plants and herbs and even animals upon your planet are all about providing a smorgasbord so that the individual chooser could find their individual balance from it.
Okay, so if I'm wanting to have an experience that's just completely delicious and very high vibe, are there foods where the vibration is more consistent with having that experience for me, like a beautiful juicy peach versus a French fry at McDonald's? Or is it completely about my belief? I mean, is there any part of the entity that contributes?
Yes, because everything is offering a vibration, and there are vibrations that are more compatible with each other and vibrations that are less compatible with each other. And so as you look at the beasts of your planet, you find beasts that eat only each other. And you find beasts that eat only plant. And you say, well, if they are pure energy and they are being motivated or inspired from their highest good, and they are gravitating to, some eat both, then there must be something other than the palate that is making these decisions. In other words, they are being inspired from a deeper level. So what your question is, and from what deep level is human inspired to eat? And what would be the best food if he were choosing from that innate beast part of him? What would he choose? And we would say you would choose the purer, simpler, less complicated foods, and you would be inspired to combining them to your greatest advantage depending upon what was happening within your experience. If your intent was to rest, you would be inspired to different foods than if your intent was to run. If your intent was to be very active, you would be inspired to different foods than if your intent was to sit and be still. In other words, a purely connected being would have quite a variety that they would choose for optimum physical experience. You would get so that you would just sense the vibration of the food, and it would call you. In other words, your desire would be identified, the vibration of the food's vibration is already identified, and the manager would bring you together. You would eat fewer processed foods. You would eat no chemicals or preservatives of any kind. You would drink predominantly water with very little variation on that. In other words, there are things that from that beast-like place you would gravitate to.
Great. Thank you.
We're wanting to add to that the belief that you hold about anything that you eat is 1,000 times more important than anything we've just said.
Mm-hmm. So if I line both of those up, then I've really got it.
You have it. In other words,
yeah.
Here's the big thing. If you are happy when you eat, if you are happy when you eat, then whatever you are eating has a much better probability of serving you in the way that you intend. If you are guilty when you eat, you are eating under a blanket of resistance.
Mm-hmm.
If you are angry when you eat, you're eating under a blanket of resistance. And so, in many ways, the more you learn about food, the less well off you are. Because the more guilty you feel about almost everything, you see. We hardly see any of you really enjoying your food. You almost all feel uncomfortable about it in some way when you eat. And that's why it is so delightful. Our favorite thing to witness relative to food is a child eating something decadent and not knowing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, there's times I wish I could just have amnesia about ice cream, and the beliefs that have come along with that. But so, what
Well,
you're
let us
saying
put a big topper on this and say to you, the very worst thing that you could do is to do something that you believe is wrong. So if you've gathered a belief about a specific food, and you know you believe it because every time you do it you feel uncomfortable, you are better off not to do it. Because you just can't buck that current. In other words, that discord that was within you is amplified so dramatically when you take the action. And so, which puts you in one of two places. Either you have to limit your activities to your beliefs, which is not a bad way to live, or modify your beliefs to match your activities. In either case, you allow well-being.
Yeah, I do a little of both, I think.
Yes?
Yep.
It's a constant dance.
Yeah. So I want to know specifically about a plant. I want to know about the plant marijuana, like what its intention was coming through. And I'm sure people have a variety of experiences if they choose to partake. And for me personally, I just noticed an enormous sense of immediate relief and just resistance, and an intense appreciation of even the tiniest, subtlest little detail in something. And so I've heard you speak on the subject, more in general terms, like combining it with alcohol and any kind of altering substances. And I'm more curious from, a medicinal or an intention kind of standpoint with that plant.
Well, we have to say to you that the plant did not come forth with the intent necessarily to interact with you. In other words, it did not say, I will go forth so that man will find ways to utilize me. The plant consciousness is not like that. But there is consciousness or manager, some would call it God, we would call it creative life force, that intended for a balance, and it was inspired in its beingness, as is everything else inspired in its beingness. In other words, to get very specific with it kind of takes it off into a place that it never meant to be, or never really has been. Give us a deeper part of your question here. In other words, we get a sense of where you're going with this, but be more specific still.
Well, I use a lot of herbs and essential oils and all kinds of natural substances, and I'm very aware of just the subtlest. I'm very sensitive to the differences between them, and I just love playing in that realm. And
because you are a vibrational interpreter, and it's like someone becoming a connoisseur of wine. You have become a connoisseur of fragrance. You are deliberately heightening your ability to discern the vibration through those senses.
Well, and I've heard you speak about using things that alter you in a certain way as having a numbing effect, so that you experience less resistance, and that's why you feel better. And it happens in two ways, and this is what your controversy with that is, and you're right, by the way, about this, and let us tell you why. When someone utilizes a drug or alcohol, and there is that numbing effect, one might say that you could call it a numbing effect because it is causing me not to focus over there, or you could call it a clarifying, focusing effect because it is causing me to focus over there. Right.
And that's what you're getting at with the marijuana, is that it sharpens your sensitivity. In fact, there are those who find themselves feeling absolutely paranoid. In other words, it sharpens their sensitivity to an extreme in the other way. And there are all kinds of variables about that. But that's what's happening. It is causing you, it is vibrationally, begin again, it is affecting your vibrational interpreters and causing you to interpret differently with it than without it. How's that?
That sounds right on.
And so the advantage of that is that you see things through eyes that you've not seen before. The greatest advantage of it is that in looking through different eyes, there is less self-judgment. That is the biggest advantage of finding a new perception. That's what being in love, that's the advantage of being in love. When you are in love with someone and they are focused on you and you are focused upon them, you begin to see yourself through the combining of your eyes and their eyes. And the more perfect they find you, the less self-loathing you usually are yourself. Mm-hmm. And so it's the same sort of thing. It is the gaining of a new perspective. Now, we talk all day, every day about the including of the perspective of who you really are within your gaze. In other words, that's what the art of allowing is about too. It's about allowing who you really are to be the dominant perceiver within you. And when you allow who you really are, you may have heard us express Esther's experience as she was one day waiting for Jerry at the gate, and she stood there waiting, joyful in her moment. And all of a sudden, she felt a extreme altered state of consciousness where all of her physical senses were heightened beyond anything that she'd experienced before. Fragrances that she could not identify were moving through her. Sounds of birds and creatures that were so far away she could not see them, but she could hear them as if they were sitting all around her. The colors in the sky, all of her physical senses exaggerated to the point that she wondered if she was still alive. And then she said, "Abraham, it's you, isn't it?" And we said, "You've caught us again. Peeping through your eyes, smelling through your nose, hearing through your ears, feeling through your body." In other words, she had, in her moment of appreciation, and by the things that had happened, she had brought herself to a place of such full allowing of that which we were about, that she was able to see her life through our eyes, you see. And that's almost what you're talking about happens with these mind-altering drugs. It distracts you from your usual track and gives you an opportunity. Now, what happens is, you hear us talk about thought forms or vibrational rivers or streams. There are all kinds of thought forms that surround you. In other words, as the people who participate in this room, once we are all no longer here, will benefit by the vortex that has been opened here. In other words, there are good vibes here as a result of what is taking place here. And while they may not be able to pinpoint it precisely, the party that will ensue here will benefit from what has transformed before. And almost every place and moment in time is affected by something that has been focused there. In other words, as consciousness focus, it affects the surrounding vibrational field. So, as physical beings experience, we're using your words, the mind-altering substances, depending upon what their vibrational nature has been prior to that. In other words, the vibrational, when Esther went to the gate, she was already teetering on the edge of vibrational harmony with us. And so it was easy for us to join her and share that moment. If Esther were to use a drug, she has not yet used a drug or even marijuana. Her body has not experienced that, although she's experienced similar effects through the energy that we are offering. If you are participating in this drug, you become susceptible is not the best word, but meaning vibrationally harmonious with whatever the vibration, the vibrational tendency that you've been riding in before. In other words, a person who has been having a hard time, and that's the vibration that's been around them, and those are the thoughts that they've been thinking, that's the habits of thought. When they participate within a drug, as you are describing, they would have a different kind of experience than you would have if you have been in vibrational harmony with your source energy prior to going into it. That's why the drug experiences are so confounding to the experts that are trying to gather the statistics. Because the vibrational factor is the big factor, and it cannot be measured through your physical terms. How much drug you utilize can be measured. What the source of its origin, how pure it is or how much it is diluted, all of that can be measured. But the vibrational content, and that's what it's all about anyway, isn't it? It's about affecting the vibration of your being to give you a different perspective.